Um, this for me was very weird. I say again during the actual pick ban live, I said when they ban
Yeah,
Fiora that either it's going to be a first pick Camille from Xenex, or they've got something clear in mind that they want to play against Camille that they feel can make real headway. Because that's the only reason you'd ban Fiora right now. And they give away Camille and they play Poppy into it, but they also try and combine the Poppy with Cog Lulu.
Like, what's wrong with Shen here again?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, we were saying that as we watched it.
Like, A, I think Shen's better, and B, I think picking Cog here is horrible because you get lane counted super hard. Like, if you pick Cog and they pick, like, Caitlyn Karma, or wait, is Karma banned? No, she's not. Like, if they pick Caitlyn Karma, you just lose this lane 100%. And then you also lose top lane because you've given away Camille without a good counter. And then you're, like, picking Victor mid, who's going to have a losing matchup mid before 1200 gold anyway. And if they play it properly, he's going to have a losing matchup. So, yeah.
To me, this shows that you've learned very little from game one. And it's like, okay, so game one we started with a very powerful early game, into a mid-game trough, into a very powerful late game. But in this game, you're starting with next to nothing apart from Lee Sin in terms of strength in the early game, a little bit more mid-game, and then just a slow ramp-up time to what will be a very strong late-game comp. But how is a late-game comp ever going to be able to work or function versus MNM? Because MNM's got Camille past 20. If this game gets to 20 minutes and somehow Xenex aren't ahead, which they're unlikely to be because they're still ramping up at that point, then Camille will be in the opposite side of the map to Baron. You will have to invest double resources to her, and then it opens up for either Baron or split push pressure. And they have 2 points of pressure that you can't answer both with Xenex's comp. And if you're having to take Lee Sin to help the Poppy stop Camille splitting, then you've got Lulu, Victor, and Kog'Maw, which can easily be engaged on by the Rengar with Orianna, and Kog'Maw can't return as much damage because Braum's present, and it's just very, very tough. And I think this comp's actually probably even worse than game one with regards to, okay, it's more balanced for aiming towards one long spike, but it's a spike that's very, very unachievable.
Yeah, I think it's horrible. I think this is something that we've learned from scrims over the past couple of weeks, is that like when people started first realizing, oh my god, Juggermaw's a thing again, people were doing this and picking it first and second rotation, but you just can't. Like the counter is way too strong. You have to let Kog'Maw drop through to the second round of bans, and then if they ban it, then you're okay with that because they've wasted a Kog'Maw ban and you pick something else. Because the counter to it is just that you lose all pressure. Like you lose every single lane if you end up doing this, because you've given away the Camille and you've given away bot lane pressure.
So then, what, are we thinking that the Fiora ban is sort of like a throwaway ban? Because if they ban Camille there, then maybe MNM just ban Lulu? Is that what they're saying? Like we just trade both? Or
so, I mean, I guess they think that MNM isn't going to give them Lulu, and they value Lulu over the Camille, and then they actually think, okay, we can play Poppy into Camille because they like that matchup. I know Bulldog likes that matchup. We think Poppy into Camille is great, but you have to have other lanes that win.
Okay, so what's the solution then? So you say you pick the Lulu still, and they get Camille Rengar. You don't think you pick Kog'Maw here?
No, you don't pick Kog'Maw here. You pick a Shen or the Poppy if you really want, and then you pick like probably your jungle, and after that you let Kog'Maw drop through.
Okay.
And if they ban the Kog'Maw, then fine. We have the entire all of the other ADCs to choose from, if this is what you want to do.
In Discord again.
What? Sorry?
Can they not ban the Caitlyn here?
I think Caitlyn is a way better ban than Jhin as well. But even if they go, I think it's MNM's mistake for actually not responding with a Caitlyn earlier. Like the Rengar Orianna is really, really strong, but I don't think it's like mandatory. I think if they pick Kog'Maw, then you should take a Caitlyn. I don't know what your opinion is on this, Fern, but I much prefer Caitlyn Karma to Caitlyn Braum, just for like destroying the Kog'Maw lane. I think if you have Caitlyn Karma here, then Kog'Maw Lulu will lose their tower at like 10 minutes.
Yeah, it says to me that MNM aren't hugely confident in getting massive lane leads. and I think that they're actually looking to somewhat allow Camille to be the aggressor and be the one that wins in this game. And they're just going to play somewhat defensive in the 4-man until Xenex's 5-man is forced to invest resources to deal with Camille. And if they invest more than one resource to deal with Camille, which they have to, then the 4-man functions very well, and they can't return damage onto the 4-man because Cog can't break through Braum very particularly well, or not very easily. So I think that's the way they're going with it. I think the Karma's a different approach in as much as they're actually looking to not only Camille out pressure, but also to win bot side of the map. I think you can go with both. Generally, I don't think giving Cog a free lane is ever good, because you're just giving him free ramp up time, which you want to nullify as much as possible. But in Discord, I put the power curve for the second game just roughly, and it's like, okay, there's next to nothing for the first 6 levels. Lee gets a bit of a spike, which can aid Victor, it can aid Cogmore, but realistically it's then plateaus for a long period of the game until level 12s, 13, something like that, and then the comp starts to kind of pick up around 35, 40, then Cog becomes a monster. But what you're saying is, by drafting this comp, is that we're not going to fall behind for 35 minutes of this game with a Cog Lulu comp and a top laner that's a tank into Camille.
And a Victor in the mid lane.
And a Victor in the mid lane. So basically, your win condition is don't fall behind for 35 minutes against MNM, and then you might be able to win. But until that, we can't do anything, which is an awful principle to go into a final with, right? To go into a final just to not lose for 35 minutes, as opposed to actually try and beat MNM like you have all season, by playing proactively, by understanding macro, by playing around certain spikes. They give themselves no spikes. There is nothing to play around until 35 minutes into this game. There is no way you win skirmishes or you win fights at all. You out-gank. Even though you've got the Lee Sin into the Rengar, who, if Lee Sin finds the Rengar in the early levels, can actually duel and out-trade this Rengar. You can't ever find the Rengar because your lanes are getting pushed in. And if your lanes are getting pushed in, then Lee can't invade because he gets collapsed on first. And if he gets collapsed on first, he dies anyway. So there's nothing.
In practice, in this draft, once you've already picked the early Cogmore, is the solution then a more early game mid laner?
Or a mid game mid laner, something that can, perhaps even Syndra or something like that.
You need something with kill pressure.
Yeah, something that actually is going to be able to push the lane.
Because we talked about, I mentioned changing up the pressure dynamic of the game in terms of who has to perform this game. And poor Sankus, I feel so bad for Sankus this game. He has been given the worst possible game ever to play Lee Sin in.
Yeah, what can you do?
You're playing Lee Sin and you have 3 losing lanes. How do I play this game? He literally has to just completely outplay, snowball the game, and kill everything when he should be completely in vision all of the time, and all of his lanes should be losing. It's the worst situation you could possibly find yourself.
And where do you have kill pressure? There is none.
Nope.
There's perhaps
only places
Camille if Poppy is able to steadfast presence the stun.
Yeah, but even still, then she just builds Ninja Tabby and then she's
and she hits Triforce Tiamat Spike, and then she's able to ignore Poppy completely and take towers anywhere. And then you have to invest Lee to her too, and I don't know. It's just disgusting.
The Lulu Cog still loses to Caitlyn even when she's got the melee support in Braum. Is that?
I think that goes into a relatively even matchup.
So from my mind, is this wrong? They're picking the Braum so that in mid game when you buff up this Cogmore, the Braum is going to cancel out a lot of that.
Yeah,
rather than for
he's going to cancel a lot of he's going to cancel a lot of Cogmore's skirmish damage.
And the Victor laser as well.
And that too. And what it does provide, where Karma might not so much, it provides assisted kill pressure from the Rengar gank.
Yeah.
When Rengar is 6 and looks to gank, then Braum can set up for that really fairly well.
I think it's a mismatch though. I think if you're going to take Braum, that's fine. Braum's really good into Cogmore, but take a more aggressive ADC. Take Lucian, for example. Take something that has insane kill pressure in lane that you're going to all in with, but you don't all in with Caitlyn. That's not how you play Caitlyn lanes. You just push the lane constantly, and you just constantly take little poke trades, and you chip their tower down. That's like these two champions want to do two different things. Either take Caitlyn Karma or take Lucian Braun.
Again, it looks quite somewhat scared from MNM too, in as much as they're not comfortable to outright win the lane if they pick a strong lane. So they're going to pick something that's going to naturally be perfectly fine in the lane for the first 5-6 levels, and then okay, it's just going to scale, but it's allowed to scale in this instance. Last game, Xenex's Caitlyn wasn't allowed to scale, or should never have been allowed to scale. They had to make aggressive moves, whereas there's no need to have to be aggressive in the mid game necessarily by MNM, because Camille's going to do all of that for you, and your 4-man can be relatively passive until multiple resources are invested into killing Camille. So Caitlyn doesn't need to be strong in the mid game this instance, and then late game she's going to be okay. She's not going to be a late game Cogmore, but she's going to be still very potent in taking towers and powerful within the kind of smaller skirmishes. But it looks a bit like a lack of confidence from MNM beating Xenex comfortably in terms of skill, and that's why they draft like this. But I think Xenex has no points where they can win this game. It's literally they've got to hope that MNM don't do anything proactive for 35 minutes, and then you might win. And that kind of disturbs me to an extent where I feel like
So
Xenex gave themselves so little chance.
I feel like they've like tunneled really hard on one thing in this draft, and they probably got to the end of this draft and looked at it and were like, shit.
What can we do?
It feels like all of them have been saying like, okay, I want this champion for this game, like into this matchup, or like, the bot lane's like, okay, I want Kog'Maw, and we're like, okay, great. And Shikari's like, right, I want to play a different champion this game. I want Poppy into Camille. Okay, great. And Backland's like, I need a comfort champion this game because I got wrecked last game. Give me my Victor. I used to be a Victor one trick. Sangus is like, okay, I need to snowball harder. Give me Lee Sin. And like, they're all just kind of like thinking,
picks, right?
thinking very individually and like dropping back to comfort. I think very much.
From what Prosper said to me last night, he with regards to this draft, he said that Sankus felt very Shikari felt very like uneased after falling so behind in the first game, I think, into the Shen versus Poppy matchup. So he said, right, just bait them into picking Camille and I'll play Poppy and I can smash him. But it didn't go like that, like because Rifty wasn't stupid enough to have to trade all the time or to try and do any more than like he didn't need to win the matchup. He needs to wait to a point where he gets his item break points and then can split and can ignore Poppy. And that was correct by Rifty, and I think that was good. But right, sorry, one second, I'm just going to quickly get a drink. You can carry on. I'll just join in when I get back.
Okay.
So in terms of like how Xenex start off this game, I think that something goes horrifically wrong as well, and I think as much as I feel pretty bad for Sankus for having to play with this draft, he played this early game horribly. What you're going to see is that he's going to start at the Wraith camp, and then he's going to, I think, take either red buff or Krugs, and then he's going to recall, and it's just rubbish. Like, you do not start Wraith camp on Lee Sin. As much as I don't want to flame the guy, it's just really bad. We've seen this on two early game junglers now.
There as well, if you're going to start there.
Yeah, we've seen this on two early game junglers now. Like last game Elise, this game Lee Sin, and it looks like he's just copying the Korean meta of starting Raptors and then going for Krugs red recall, but not really understanding why. Backland has also started laser because he has to for this pull, which means that MNM 100% knows where Lee Sin starts because you always start Q on Victor.
He also started Q.
He also started Q, instead of the E for this camp. So like, look how low he drops here.
Basically,
that's
the plan.
If he's going to start this camp, which he shouldn't, he needs an insane pull. But the only lane he has any kill pressure in is the top lane. He needs to rush it. He needs to actually just take red, wolves, blue, and rush top lane. That's the only way this goes well. Or he goes for like a really delayed red buff take and then pass immediately top. So like does all of his camps, leaves red buff up, and then takes red and cycles back up to top with level 4, which is what he ends up doing. But it's so slow compared to the other one, and it means that by the time that happens, like Shikari's already losing the lane matchup by that point. Like Sankus could be on the top side of the map right now, and Candyfloss would have been clearing away. Candyfloss goes for some weird route that I don't really understand why he does this route, which leaves his top lane totally exposed. And just I think it's just classic kind of farm jungler, just trying to get to level 6. Basically, he's just greeding for camps instead of providing safety for his lanes. But like Sankis could be top right now, and like he could at least get summoners off of Rifty, but instead he's in base, well, coming out of base, and he has no potential to gank the top side of the map right now because he has no red buff. So like he's pathing to the top side of the map to farm. That's all he's going to do. He's going to farm this side of the map, and then he's going to go take red. So he's going to have taken 6 camps before he's even looked to gank on Lee Sin, which is disgusting. Like that's not how you play Lee Sin. I don't want to sound super harsh, but it's just wrong.
Yeah. So it's just like not having your job in the early game like understood properly, basically.
I think he's actually just seen how the Koreans are all starting and copied it and not really understood the reasoning for it. They do start E
as well, which does mean you can actually clear the camp quickly.
Yeah. But like to do that start, you need to be on Rengar or Graves or one of these champions that has insane AoE clear so that you can blow up the camp. And you need to be a lot of the time doing it with like on red side of the map so that you have a top laner that can help you with it. Like if you have a Nautilus or something that can AoE clear it. But starting on the bot side of the map at Wraiths, A, gives you 0 pressure for the first 5 minutes, 6 minutes of the game, makes you totally predictable, gives away your jungle start, and forces your mid lane to start laser, which is not what you want to do on Victor. Victor has to get to the 1,200 gold before he recalls, which means that he has to be like a force in the early game to stop the enemy mid laner just shoving him in and recalling, which is what Larsen's done.
So Larsen's, if we just touch on that a bit more, so the reason Larsen's gone back, even though he's not been able to buy like Lost Chapter or anything, is so he can get the ward and just keep pushing up.
Yeah, exactly.
Pressure to force him into a non 1250 back, basically.
Exactly. And then because of that, like if Backlund's been able to start Q, then he's able to bully this matchup a lot harder, which means he from happening. Because Victor's level 1 to 3 is actually really strong. Victor's level 1 is obscenely strong. It's like one of the strongest mid laners. It's just that you desperately need to be able to survive until 1,200 gold. So what most of the mid laners will do, which I'm surprised Larsen hasn't done, is wait till 900 gold to force that recall, because then Victor really needs to recall. But because he has the double Doran's ring, he's going to mana sustain really well compared to Victor. And by the time Victor gets to 1,200 gold, he's going to be super out of mana. So when he eventually does recall for that big power spike, he's going to lose a lot for it. I think is the kind of thought process from Larsen here.
You get the power in so you can bully him around even more.
Yeah. And like we're 5 minutes 30 in, and Sankos has literally only farmed camps. Like he's taken Krug camp twice. Maybe he's just like scarred from last game because he didn't get to take a single one of his Krug camps for the first like 15 minutes. But it's really not looking good.
Yeah. So he just needs to make sure he's getting more done on the map, basically.
Yeah, he needed a different start and he needed to pressure the lanes that like actually have pressure, because Shikari's doing way better in this lane matchup, and Poppy into Camille is decent. You can interrupt her jump, and you can actually, if she tries to use the wall jump to escape, you can actually just wall stun her and it guarantees a free Lee Sin Q.
It was 7 minions in the end that Larsen got for doing that early back, so the full wave plus a cannon all dies to Tower and Lee Sin before. That's just based. So the thought process there, rather than sticking around for more gold, is to go back early because he knows he's not going to lose much, and then just make Victor lose more.
Yeah, so I think that it's a trade-off, right? So if you force her back at 900 gold, that flash E was super weird as well from Sankos. Well, E-flash, really pointless. Just burns his flash, it means he has like no gank assist. Like he has no need to do that. He can just walk up to Larsen and smack him, and Larsen will have to flash eventually. But in terms of the mid lane recall, now Backlund has his first upgrade, so he actually has a lot more staying power in this lane. So although Larsen did get the early Doran's ring and did deny that entire wave, he's actually going to be fine now. Whereas if you hold on to a 900 gold and then force a recall, you're much more likely to force the Victor to recall. Because if you come back with Lost Chapter and he still hasn't recalled, he's probably going to die. Or like be forced out and lose just as many minions for that. But the more likely scenario is that you recall the 900 gold, he's forced into a recall, and then he can't get his first upgrade, which means he doesn't get the improved wave clear. So I think that's actually the better option.
Just for anyone who doesn't quite understand what you mean by forcing the recall, you just mean like trading loads so you both get low?
Yeah, so Larsen would like basically expend his entire mana pool on trading, expend all of his health pool, get the wave push because he has wave clear priority in this matchup before Victor gets the first back, and then as soon as you recall, the enemy mid laner is basically forced into recalling, because if you come back to lane with full HP and having spent 900 gold on a last chapter, and he hasn't recalled by this point, then he's going to be extremely low on health, extremely low on mana, and either he recalls and just loses because loses so many minions, he'll lose 2 waves in that sense, in that case, or he dies under his tower because he's low on health.
And is this one of the reasons why we don't seem to see Victor very much anymore? Is just that's if you know how to play it, you can abuse the fact that he wants at 1250 gold.
Yeah, it's really hard to play Victor into certain matchups. Victor into Orianna's pretty rough as far as I'm aware. Actually, no, Victor into Orianna's okay. But most mid laners that have a 900 recall, Victor's not usually picked into them. So I think this is just pure comfort for Backlund. Obviously, he's very comfortable in the matchup and he's doing okay, right? But I think that's more of the fact that Larson forced an early recall rather than recalled on Lost Chapter. I think that would have been a better option. But you can see that the early pressure that MNM's got from forcing him into that recall, and maybe this is part of the thought process to why Larson's done this. If it is, then credit to him, is because MNM's been able to pick up an early Infernal Drake, I think. Unless that's a visual bug.
I think it's
just a visual bug. Okay, my bad. In which case, I would have much preferred the Lost Chapter recall. But we're going back to Victor, and and when we normally see him, you see him into champions that don't have such good 900 gold recalls.
Yeah, so he's a tier as well.
Yeah, off the top of my head, perhaps a Corki who normally wants to stay until he gets Sheen or Phage or Hexdrink or something like that. Although Corki can recall on components and it's not so bad because it's much better to come back to lane with a longsword than it is to come back with just a Sapphire Crystal. But I think that's a big part of the reason why we don't see him as much.
Yeah, and there's just no components to it as well. If you go back with 1150 gold, you can't buy anything.
Yeah, and Zankus being bottom here is he's trying to read the gank from Candy Floss, which is pretty decent. But you can see that he comes in there and he's forced to just walk away because the Kog'Maw can't do anything. The Kog'Maw's having to burn all of his mana to wave clear because the Caitlyn always has shove priority on him. To be able to get in range of those minions, he's having to.
Berserk agrees first as well.
What? Sorry.
Do you know why he's gone for the Berserk agrees first, Xenex?
I actually.
And I can't see the mastery.
I can't see a good reason for it. Obviously, its XP on Kog'Maw is just an incredibly important stat, but I don't think it helps you in lane whatsoever. Maybe he desperately wanted to get back to lane and was on a really awkward amount of gold, but I think it's really bad, to be honest. What it looks like to me is that Xenex hasn't had the appropriate amount of experience in this matchup required to be they've not been punished when they've picked this matchup in scrims, and he's used to just being able to get through the lane absolutely fine. Just building Zerka Greaves and going straight for the Blade of the Ruin King. Whereas I think what he needed in this matchup was to rush the Triforce to have any hope of surviving. And MNM's done exactly what you're supposed to do, which Xenex didn't do last game, which is take the early tower.
Yeah.
Now Caitlyn can move around the map and siege super easily. The top lane siege becomes totally free now if they want it. Or they can just carry on going back, but push the Kog'Maw in, make sure he has no priority whatsoever, invade with the Rengar, who is now level 7 and equal on farm with the Lee Sin, so you're comfortable as hell there, and you just take the free Infernal Drake, which is what they should be doing.
So Caitlyn's still heading back towards bot side, and that's because you don't want to swap when there's an Infernal up?
Yeah, exactly. You can take the free Infernal, and you're still very, very early into if this is a Cloud Drake, then maybe MNM keeps switching to accelerate the pace of the game. But you actually don't want, especially against the scaling comp, you don't want to give them Infernal Drakes. Infernal Drake's super good on Victor. Not so great on Kog'Maw or anyone else on the next lineup because Lee Sin's going to scale off. So it's actually not the best Drake even for Xenex. But for MNM, it's a really good Drake because they have 4 massive damage dealers that stack loads and loads of AD and AP. So it's a super valuable Drake for them.
So with the bottom tier tower down, though, how are they going to move around the map to try and force this Infernal? Because obviously, even though they are ahead, Victor's still got a lot of damage. Kog'Maw's still starting to hurt a bit more.
Yeah, so the Caitlyn and the Braum should still have total push priority. cross for an Xenex on Lulu and Cogmore,
Yeah.
because they should just be able to push the bottom lane in. At that point, that means that the Braum's able to rotate first and put down wards, and the Rengar can join up with the Braum and like clear out all of Xenex's vision and make sure that this dragon is totally dark. But Xenex actually shouldn't even have this much vision. They shouldn't have any river vision. They shouldn't have vision in the tri-bush. Like the setup is really, really imperfect. And the fact that Shikari gets his teleport off before tempo Rifty is really weird, and Sankas gets in with a pretty good steal. But they shouldn't be in an opportunity where, or in a position where this steal like has to happen, or is able to happen, I should say.
Yeah.
And the fact they get first blood onto the Cogmore is a massive relief for Xenex.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be worth it in the end because it's traded for Caitlyn.
Actually,
so what happens? Go on.
Sorry, there was actually just a slightly strange interaction. So Sankas goes for a kick which would have hit 3 people, but goes
Yeah,
for
it looks like
which
no one
cancels it.
moves, right?
It's because the Lulor knocks them up, I think. So if we watch it again, so that's just a bit of unfortunate miscommunication. Because if you kick Candy into Ludders there, I don't know, but I think that probably ends up working out even better for you. Wait,
Yeah.
just go forward for a bit more. So they do the same thing. They try and push bot lane out, but they haven't pushed it in enough. Is that why? Again, they're just too impatient at trying to force this objective before they fully got all the vision.
Yeah, like they're grouping for Dragon right now before Caitlyn's actually finished pushing the wave. Like you
Yeah,
need
and
to
it's
push
not
the
even
wave
gonna
in,
get
and
to
you need
tower.
to
So they're not even
you need to
losing
push
a
the
lead as
last
well.
wave before the tower in, which would mean that Cogmore would have to show a bot, and when Cogmore shows on that wave to clear it, then you take the Dragon. And you don't even need to move the Orianna out of mid. The Orianna can stay mid permanently.
Yeah.
As long as Cogmore is showing bot, Orianna can stay mid for pressure, and you can just 2-man the Drake, and Braum can stop the Lee Sin from coming in.
Yeah, so watch the Lee Sin ult and the Lulu ult. So he kicks Candy at that point, but he gets knocked back and knocked up as well, so that's why he's taking that big chunk. But if he hits Ladders there, then that's actually better, because Inax can probably kill the Caitlyn being chunked.
Yeah. I mean, Xenex is exhausted at that point. I don't think he would have Caitlyn anyway.
Yeah.
It would have been much better for them. But Backlund's out of mana, actually, which is huge for this fight. He ends up getting everything off, but it would have been nice to have a blue buff on him at that point. Is that Fern I hear?
Yeah, I am here. Just
All right.
with a very high ping.
I see. Yeah, but after, if you can get a kill onto Cogmore here and the Infernal Drake, maybe you can come back into this game. But the fact that Caitlyn gets a returning kill is awful. The fact that you've picked an extremely late game scaling ADC and then got picked into Caitlyn, right? Like as we talked about, Caitlyn's power trough is like super good in the early game, and then bad in the mid game, and then great in the late game. So you're actually picking a champion which is weakest at the point where Caitlyn is strong, and then by the time you get strong in the late game, Caitlyn's going to be strong again. And Caitlyn's going to be ahead of your curve for the entire game, so she's actually going to get to that point of late game strength before the Cogmore is even viable in terms of being able to shred through people in team fights, especially because he's not built Triforce, right? So he doesn't have a mid game spike at all. So there's actually no point in this game where the Cogmore is stronger than the Caitlyn.
He goes Wit's End in the end here, but isn't...
Oh yeah, I remember.
I would have thought,
Like,
isn't Blade surely the...
He should have been. He should have gone bulk here. Wit's End is
Yeah.
total garbage. Not wanting to sound too
obviously,
dismissive
I mean,
and too harsh,
for-
but there's
like-
actually just no reason to build Wit's End. I guess he wants like an early spike, but
And with the Lulu picks, obviously, is enhanced by Wit's End as well.
yeah, but so is Bork. If you really want the attack speed and the
I
on-hit
just meant,
damage,
sorry,
then get a
the
Bork.
magic resist shred.
Oh, I see.
Picks
Yeah,
first.
that makes sense. But you're
It's
not
just not worth it, is it? Yeah.
you're not helping anyone really by shredding the magic resist that much. Yes, it makes the Victor damage a bit better, but the magic resistance that you're pouring into this item, which is a lot of the gold value, is totally worthless. Okay, you're not going to get one shot by the Orianna, but you shouldn't do anyway because you're playing a Protect the Cogmore comp. You're playing with a Lulu.
And then as Dragon's not an objective anymore, even though they didn't get it, MNM can just do the same thing of
Yeah.
just push top until you get the tower and then rotate to mid and do the same thing? Or?
Yeah, they just need to accelerate the Caitlyn at this point. Your point of power is just the Caitlyn now, and all you do is just rotate the Caitlyn around the map, and you support and your jungler with the Caitlyn at all times to keep her safe and to keep her able to push, and you just really lean on this 1v1 matchup, which is massively in the Caitlyn's favour. I guess one thing that the Wit's End does do perhaps is that it's maybe he just desperately wants the power now to stop the Caitlyn taking his top tower. I guess that's one reason that it could be good. And obviously the Caitlyn's going to have very low magic res, so maybe the Cogmore Lulu lane can just kill the Caitlyn by some miracle, but it shouldn't happen.
Hmm.
The other thing is that MNM
Blade
have
also is
teleport
good
advantage
1v1 as well,
anyway,
isn't it?
so yeah, Blade gives you staying power in this lane. Like the Kog'Maw really needs the lifesteal to be able to actually step up
Yeah.
and clear minions. Otherwise, he's going to get poked out really hard by the Caitlyn.
I don't know what mastery he's gone, but I haven't seen Warlords yet, so I don't know if he's gone for further or.
I'm pretty sure
Storm
he'll have gone
Raiders,
further. Like I'm pretty sure he went further if I remember correctly
Yeah, but isn't that again to do with?
to take the lifesteal.
Yeah, if you're not going to build. Wait, should we watch that one again? So I assume this is partly due to the fact that Sankas hasn't been able to get anything done due to the problems that we talked about in Champ Select.
Yeah.
But going for this 3v3 at this point, there's no reason, right? There's no.
I mean, MNM don't need to take this 3v3. Like, for Xenex, this is a good 3v3. Like, the Wit's End actually gives the Kog'Maw some immediate power over the Caitlyn. And you still have the Lulu, which should have, like, a poke advantage on the Braum at this point. So it's not even a... It's like a decent gank, to be fair. I don't think they actually had vision of Sankas before this point. But yeah, like, he goes really deep. The fact that they end up managing to trade 1-for-1 is good, but Inex loses all of his health, and that means they're going to lose the tower for it.
Yeah.
So, like you have to force something at this point, but there's just nowhere good on the map to actually force anything.
Okay, and why is it that you need to force if you've still got the Kog'Maw like scaling up and like
because you don't have
any
any.
strong, right?
Yeah, it is strong, but you don't have any lifesteal in this Kog'Maw because you don't have Warlords and you don't have Blade of the Ruined King. So again, like you're in a position for Xenex where this is completely unsustainable. The Kog'Maw's going to get bullied out of lane eventually, and he's going to have to recall, or you're just going to take chip damage on the tower. One of those two things is going to happen. So you have to force something around that lane, because otherwise, yeah, like Kog'Maw will lose CS and Caitlyn will take the tower, and then she'll go mid, and it'll just be rinse and repeat until you're too far behind for it to ever like make a difference. Like I said before, the Kog'Maw has to be, he has to get an unnatural gold lead in this early game to ever be ahead of the Caitlyn. Otherwise, the Caitlyn's just going to be more powerful than him at all points in the game.
It's just I don't know. This comp literally has 2 in every 100. It might get some kind of unnatural gold lead, which emphasizes your Victor and Kog'Maw spikes. But realistically, like, you don't win any skirmish ever in this game, whether it's around Infernal, whether it's that skirmish around top lane. Like, unless you severely outplay the opposing team, you don't win. Like, it's just so hard to ever find windows to win this game for Xenex, just straight from the off.
If the Victor was
okay, they make a lot of mistakes,
right,
as do MNM, but when you give yourself such little chance, it's like, I don't know.
And so if we bring it back to sort of tips in drafting, so from the first game we had, if 2 areas get focused in bans, you should probably pick them up, basically. So in this one, is it if you're picking late game, you can't have it everywhere. You need a point to have.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think
you need something that will win you skirmishes in mid game and can gain leads in the early game.
So
but there is nothing.
Even though the Syndra is just one pick different, you then just play Lee Sin Syndra in the mid game, and you have something to do with the Lee Sin. You have pressure. You have something to worry about.
To be clear, when you talk about pressure, what you mean is pushing lanes. Like, you desperately need pushing lanes to win games of League of Legends. If you have better scaling than your opponent and you have 2 pushing lanes, you're probably winning a draft. But, like, if you have 3 losing lanes, which I think Xenex does, then even if you have an aggressive early jungler, the jungler won't do anything because all of his lanes are getting pushed. And you should, like, MNM should have complete control over his jungle because the push priority gives you roam priority, which means that it should always be a 2v1 in the jungle. MNM plays it right. So you need lanes that can push out. If you're going to pick a Kog'Maw on the bottom side of the map, you need a mid lane that wins, and you need a top lane that goes at least even. If you win mid and you lose bot and you go even top, that's okay. But right now, that's not the situation. So if this Victor is a Syndra and the Poppy is a Renekton, then this is such a better draft. For example.
Yeah, 100% agree. Because you can play around the top side of the map early, you can let Renekton get a lead, you can get teleport advantage, then you can transition that early game lead into what Syndra would already have the pressure in the mid lane. So you could transition your early game top side lead into making a play around your late game scaling champion using the early game prowess of Renekton to possibly TP in and get first blood tower because you've got TP advantage, or secure the Infernal with your teleport of Renekton over the opposing top laner. But you've literally got every single component apart from Lee Sin wants to scale, and that makes Lee Sin useless by default because he can constantly get his jungle is taken control of by MNM, and you have no point in the game where you ever got any proactive moves that you can make that are going to be productive for the team. You're just constantly got to react and hope that they don't get a massive gold lead for 35 minutes, and that's literally it.
And so at this point, even though
the YouTube thing's in the way, but so they're 4K down at this point. Do they still need to fight for this Infernal just because like they're just screwed because of their comp anyway, or do they just let it go if they got the first one?
If you fight for the Infernal, you lose the fight and the Infernal.
They lose the game basically.
The only play you can make here realistically is to try and push two other lanes. So you push mid, you push bot, and Lee Sin tries to steal, and you just you leave the Lee Sin. You're okay, Lee Sin, you're gonna die. Enjoy, jump in, try and smite the Drake. We'll try and take some towers.
Yeah.
Okay. So this ends up basically costing them the whole game, I think, if I remember right.
You just got to take random trade-offs that you should never have to take. You can't because effectively your team can contest nothing for 35 minutes.
Also, that jump in on the trap was super unfortunate. Like he puts a ward down and they immediately
and the
down on
flash
it, so he doesn't
see
see.
Camille in as well as the same.
And then Camille ult onto any kind of AD carry is disgusting, especially when the AD carry is your focal point of the whole comp because he's trapped inside Camille ult. And
something we haven't really
Poppy wasn't
touched
there
on
to cancel.
That like picking Kog'Maw into Camille actually isn't even that smart in the first place.
Yeah, especially when you ban out any proactive counter to Camille too.
Yeah, if it's a Renekton, like I said, this is fine because you can play around the top side of the map. You can get Renekton ahead, you can get Syndra ahead, and then that forces the bot lane to play more passively against you because the Caitlyn can't like the Rengar Caitlyn Braum can't dive your bot lane because if they get TP'd behind by a Renekton or roamed on by a Syndra, then they're going to die. So like you actually have like a way to get to the late game.
Yep.
Yeah. So this is now just 8K down. Is this all pretty much just the draft? I mean, how could they have played this better without just saying like, well, they just messed up?
Between the draft and Sankas pathing the way he did in the early game, that's it. Like if you take Lee Sin and you fight for 6 minutes of the game, then you're going to lose most of the time, even if you do have a better early game draft. Like Sankas' early pathing was probably the second biggest factor. The draft is like 80% of it. I'd say there's like maybe a 20% chance that Sankas does something that creates an early lead in the early game. Like maybe they kill Rifty and they get TP advantage on Shakira and then they can make play spot. Maybe, but that's it.
And that's the only window they can do anything though. So realistically, they don't have enough chance with the tools they've been given to win this game. In 95% of situations, unless something works out very, very well for you, you're relying on that to actually gain openings to get any kind of gold lead or to be able to scale. And it's not even like in this comp that Kog'Maw's got a huge amount of protection. It's literally only Lulu. So I don't know. It's very tough. Straight from the off.
Do you want to even keep going with the rest of this game, or is that just...
I mean, the game's done now.
Game 2?
Yeah, when Baron exists, and Camille's able to do this and sit bot lane while it takes 2, maybe even 3 people to stop her now, you're in a situation where you just lose on 2 points of pressure, and you can never match those 2 points of pressure, because if you do, Cog has no protection because you're bringing the team away from Kog'Maw.
Yeah, I think overall you can see like the main glaring points that I think Xenex got exposed on in this series are that they're drafting super hard for late, which is probably because they've not been punished in scrims enough. So they've probably not had good enough quality scrims, realistically. B, that Sankas' early game pathing is horrible in both of these games, if I'm like completely honest. And C, that the team over relies on backland.
Yeah. So I mean,
I don't think they have. I'm not even. I can't imagine that they've tried this this kind of style within their scrims. I'm not really sure. It's like I don't know if they predicted how unprepared for a high pressure like stage game they would be or something. But Prospero was saying to me like it's really hard to get the draft right between do you go for the best picks for the situation or do you go to make the players comfortable when they're nervous? And I've been in that situation before where you've kind of trying to get the best of both worlds, right? You've got to try and make the players comfortable in what they're doing on the certain champions they've got, and also allow it to work for what you're trying to do as a comp. And I'm not sure they quite get the balance right, or they didn't predict how different it is playing on stage to playing at home on your average week.
So it's just
I mean,
sort of
I
about
think,
finding
like,
the balance, right?
I think the picks for your players' comfort and the picks for your comp shouldn't necessarily be different picks. Like, the way you should prepare for a series like this is by practicing like a couple of comps until they are perfect and you are 100% comfortable on them, and then you shouldn't have to worry about like,
I think,
do I pick something that I'm good on or do I pick something that works?
Yeah, I think the other thing as well that's important is when you're picking champs, even maybe not more, like obviously it depends player to player, but rather than picking champs that they're good on as a champ, you pick champs that they maybe don't have to be super proactive on. Because even if you're really, really comfortable on Lee Sin and you played like 1,000 Lee Sin games, if you're put in a game where you are the only thing that can make plays early game and you have to make plays, like the second you put that on a stage, then that's got to be worse than playing something where you can just scale even if you're less comfortable on the champ.
Yeah, I mean, I have to imagine that the way that Xenex has played scrims is by playing like leaning on the bot lane and the mid lane, right? And this is not a game where Backlund can realistically have any impact on the early game. So I obviously I can't say 100%, but I don't feel like this is the way that they would have practiced. At least not the way that I would have wanted this team to practice. If I were coaching them, I would not want to be playing scrims with picking like full scaling comps with our strongest player on Victor. That's not the way that I would want. So I feel like Xenex is just picking for pure comfort in this game, which to me shows like that they've not been practicing one comp enough. Yeah, like they need to have one or two comps, because remember this is a finals that you literally show up for and you play 5 games and that's it. You don't have to go through a playoff bracket. There's no chance for them to scout you. All you have to do is get 2 comps realistically, or 3 comps, because if you win 2 games in a series like this, you're so likely to take the 3rd one anyway. Like you just have to get
there is actually a
one
point
or 2 things
game
very, very practiced
where Xenex actually have some kind of chance where they win the one fight off the back of we'll have to see exactly, but they manage to get a fight victory and are able to turn on to Baron, and then the red buff steals the Baron.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
That solo loses game 3 as well as this game, because at that point you're just tilted because you thought you might have some kind of chance.
Yeah, like the level of frustration is unreal at that point.
Yeah.
The funniest part is the Caitlyn walks away. Like, she's done. She's like, oh, okay, I lost this Baron, fine, whatever, we'll give the Baron, we'll win in a minute. Takes her with the red buff.
So, I mean, as well, like, we do keep going on at Xenex for the draft and stuff, but of the games I've seen this whole split, MNM have never looked even remotely near this good.
No.
Like, they did play these games out pretty well.
Yeah, they look pretty solid. I think, like, there was some... I think more than, like, MNM playing well as a team, I think the players are just looking very, to be honest. Like, there were a lot of mistakes with how MNM was moving around the map in the previous game in terms of like actually being able to snowball their lead and coordinate, and like in this game, in a game where you have such an insane early game advantage, you shouldn't lose an Infernal Drake. Like, that's really, really poor macro play.
Yeah.
So I think more than anything, it's Xenex not playing as they have been or as they like should be because of nerves and because of poor practice, and like MNM just showing up as individuals.
And there's still no lifesteal on the Cogmore, so whenever Camille jumps on it, he's just going to
like this build is horrible. This build's like a mid-game spiking build. This build does not scale into the late game. Like, you're picking a late-game scaling comp, and then you're picking a Cogmore build which spikes at 3 items and then gets progressively worse compared to crit builds, or compared to like the Runon's Hurricane type build. Like the Caitlyn is infinitely more powerful than him right now. She's on 3 items and he's on 2. Like, and they're more expensive items.
They're a lot more expensive.
Like, I think this Kog'Maw build is completely horrible for this situation. I don't even like it most of the time. Like, if you're playing like a super mid-game spike team comp where it's like, okay, we get to 25 minutes and then we roll over them, then fine. But that's not what this comp wants to do.
And it's like, how does anyone ever stop this Camille now? You do nothing. And this is where MNM are greedy, because they're getting the inhib on bot side. Why do you need to get Baron as well? Just get the inhib and then get the Baron. Like, whilst when someone comes to deal, but they overstep, and then they get baited into a very good zone control by Backland, and they actually lose this fight, I think.
Yeah. I mean, look at the enormous wave they have on top side. Again, it's just like if they literally waited for like 2 more minion waves, this Baron is 100%.
Is it? Because
no, I guess not.
It's still going okay.
This is still Rifty just rolling all over people.
Yeah, the game must have kept going for even longer.
Which I think in itself shows that MNM aren't showing up particularly well as a team. Like at this point, they're just rolling over people. Because,
I think MNM are the best UK team ever for capitalizing on other teams' mistakes. Like, and they just punish you very hard when you fuck up, but they don't do anything particularly good themselves to start with.
Yeah.
And it's a shame that exists, because if a team could, like, if Xenex could play like they have for the majority of the split on this series, MNM I don't think would have necessarily the answers, but they gave themselves so few opportunities to do that that it made it really difficult. And I think this is the one where, like, look how greedy this is. I don't know. As Xenex just spawned with full items, full gold. Okay, they got no jungler, but whatever, it doesn't matter. And now you're actually going to go and do Baron on that HP without resetting first.
It's a really nice poppy art as well.
And this is the Tilter.
And I'm so sad. It's red buff.
It's the last second red buff as well.
But so I mean, do they need to? Can't they just wait for Lee Sin? Because I mean, I know it was red buff, but like, she still has a chance.
Xenex just waits for Lee Sin now.
So
Caitlyn has to walk away. She knows.
TP
Why do they
comes out
release
from
the Baron
Rifty,
here?
which actually is in between. But yeah, they don't need to release it. It's all good.
Yeah, but I think what this series has shown about MNM is they're just a group of players with like good general League of Legends instincts, but they don't really like have that much team play.
No.
Like all of the players individually knows how to punish his opponent, like in their lane, or in terms of like when I can gank this mid laner or stuff like that. But they don't actually move together like a team, and like that's probably just because realistically they haven't practiced enough this split. Like they haven't played together much this split.
Yeah, I don't know. It's sad for me to see that Xenex, like, because Xenex was so promising for the whole split, and then this was the final result of it, and that's a shame.
I think a big part of it is that there was such a lack of competition for them. Like I said earlier, like there was a point where Prosper was saying that they hadn't lost scrims in like a month, like at all, and this fact, especially that MNM were not practicing and were not playing together, actually was a huge advantage for them, because there was never anyone for like Xenex to actually play against that was going to challenge them.
Well, why are they not scrimming against high-level scrim opposition?
Yeah, but you don't have to just scrim UK. Yeah.
No, yeah, like they should have, but in terms of like in the league, there was no other team that was actually challenging them whatsoever. Like apart from XL, who did it at like one point, but XL again only scrims externally, which is like what you should do, to be fair. But like Xenex didn't have proper coaching staff as far as I'm aware. I don't know if they had a manager, but like obviously their scrims were not good enough. I think is what we can take away from this series.
And perhaps they were approaching scrims differently too. Perhaps they were approaching scrims to win, so they were finding teams that they felt confident they could beat, as opposed to approaching scrims with an objective within the scrim to gain knowledge about something, or to gain a certain level on something, as opposed to approaching the scrims to win, which is a mistake that a lot of teams I find make.
because players just like to win. I think that's one of the
and it's like a confidence boost and stuff, but that's not that doesn't
Yeah.
help your progression as a team.
one of my favourite, and I've forgotten who it's from actually at this point. Coaching quotes of all time is coaching is convincing players to do something they don't want to do to achieve something they want to achieve.
Yeah.
So, like you get that, like they don't. You have to convince people that we're not going to win all the scrims, and that's going to be better in the long run.
And something I've only started doing since I've been at GG Vodafone, as opposed to what I did before when I was in the UK scene, is that I objectify every single scrim. I set 3 or 4 objectives for the scrim that are normally set around certain types of play. So, for instance, we're going to try and utilize every single TP advantage we have within this scrim to gain increased gold lead. And I don't give a fuck whether the team wins or loses. That doesn't matter to me. It's not. The point is, and then what we do at the end of the scrim is we look back at all the TP advantages and we see how well we used them. And if the boys realise that, okay, we achieved our objective, that's great. They're much happier with that because they can see progression than if they won or lost against a team that's better or worse than they are.
I do really think that's important to focus on the process rather than focus on the results. Like if you can see that you're getting better at whatever it is, then it doesn't matter what else is going on.
Yeah, and that's how you build team play, and like the most elusive concept, synergy. Like no one knows like how you build synergy, right?
Exactly.
And it's all about just making sure that everyone understands their role within a specific play. Like you build up this playbook, like this is what we do when we teleport bot for a dive. The ADC has to do X and the mid laner has to do Y, etc., etc., etc. And that's, I think, what MNM is lacking, because everyone is just individually punishing their opponents.
Okay, so that's the end of game 2 then.